Okay, let's unpack this moment, right? In a congressional hearing, it just kind of freezes.
Yeah.
Caroline Levit, she makes this really pointed comment aimed at Jasmine Crockett's mother. And the room doesn't, erupt.
Shouting, nothing like that.
Instead, this incredibly strange, like 17 seconds of silence
Yeah.
just falls. You could almost feel the air change.
That sudden quiet, right? In a place that's usually so full of noise, so charged. That's really what grabbed me. It wasn't just quiet, it felt heavy, weighted. And that's what we're getting into today.
Right.
We're doing a deep dive into the weight of silence. Now it's a dramatized account, so it's fictional.
Inspired by real stuff, though.
Exactly. Inspired by very real themes, justice, loss, and, the impact of choosing not to react in the way people expect.
Yeah, and while it is a story, our goal isn't really to pick apart the fiction itself, is it?
No, not really.
It's more about understanding why that silence, that specific non-reaction, feels so significant. What they're telling us about power, maybe.
Yeah.
About dignity. Especially when someone throws out such a personal attack right there in public.
And to really get the gravity of it, you have to picture the room.
Okay.
The source paints this really vivid picture of hearing room 2141, cold, bright lights, these kind of flat gray walls. Even the air, it says, feels arranged, cold, still, obedient. It's all procedure.
Sterile is a good word for it. Designed for managed talk, not raw emotion.
Precisely. You've got the polished nameplates, everything in its place. And into that atmosphere, Caroline Levit says this line, "If I had grown up like your mother, maybe I'd be just as extreme."
And the source points out, it wasn't yelled.
No.
It almost makes it feel sharper, like a little dart.
Exactly. A calculated strike. And the immediate fallout, those first, say, 8 seconds of silence, it's like watching a system just freeze up.
Yeah.
You get these tiny reactions described, and A just stops mid-motion. The chair glances at the clerk. A tech guy probably wonders if the mic's cut out.
And Jasmine Crockett. Her reaction is quiet too, but it says so much. She just slowly puts her pen down.
There's a deliberateness there. The source says something like someone putting down a memory they couldn't carry any longer.
Wow. Meanwhile, Caroline's face, unchanged.
Yeah.
That contrast is kind of chilling, isn't it? What do you think that means, her just sitting there?
Well, it could be she misjudged, maybe expected fireworks, an immediate shouting match.
I didn't get it.
And didn't get it. So that quiet might have thrown her, even if she kept her composure on the outside. That stillness, after saying something clearly meant to ignite things, it starts to shift the power, doesn't it, in a weird way?
It does. And the source even notes the room itself reacting. The congressman uncrossing his arms, the lights flickering slightly, like the building felt it.
Almost, yeah. Then comes Jasmine's actual response. In those next, 9 seconds?
Right. She looks up, straight at Caroline.
And the description is key. It's not anger, not disappointment even. No, but recognition. Like she's seen this before. The source says, as if she had met Caroline before, not in this room, but in the eyes of school counselors, police reports, and clip news soundbites that never asked for her side.
Oof. That hits hard.
Yes, really does. It suggests this deep weariness, like, this again. And that eye contact, just holding it steady, it's powerful, refusing to shrink.
And you see the effect. A reporter lowers their phone.
Yeah.
The stenographer stops typing.
Right. And later says it was a mechanical issue.
Which sounds convenient.
Very convenient, yeah. It feels like everyone knew something bigger was happening than just transcribing words. What does that pause tell you from the people whose whole job is to record?
That this wasn't just politics as usual, that everyone kind of sensed, okay, this is different. This is something else.
Exactly. And Caroline, she blinks. Once.
Just once.
Then Jasmine takes this slow breath. The source says she's summoning strength not from the moment, but from everything that came before it. And even the tiniest sound, like a foot shifting, apparently echoed in that silence. The chair starts to reach for the gavel, the symbol of order.
Right, control.
And then stops himself.
Why do you think he stops?
I think it shows he recognized this wasn't something you could just bang into submission. It needed space. It wasn't procedural anymore.
Yeah.
And then Jasmine looks down, not defeated, the source says, but like she's remembering something deep, like someone stepping out of a place no one else had seen that she had lived in for years.
So Caroline's comment wasn't just politics. It wasn't just personal.
Yeah.
It was like trampling on sacred ground.
Yes. And Jasmine's silence becomes this incredibly strong, unspoken wall a defense.
Absolutely. And it's interesting how that feeling, that weight, continues even after the 17 seconds are up.
It does.
The source describes these little things. An aide and a staffer, they just exchange a look, a knowing look. A congressman slowly puts his pen down. The court recorder leans in, trying to hear. But there's nothing to hear.
Right. It's the silence itself that's speaking. It's this collective, unspoken agreement that, okay, a line was crossed here.
The usual rules just went out the window.
Exactly. And then the story takes us inside Jasmine's head, what she's experiencing, triggered by those words.
And we get these flashes of memory.
Yeah, the smell of hand sanitizer brings you right to a hospital, doesn't it?
Instantly. The quiet hum of a TV, and then that image, her mother watching Karoline on TV earlier.
Saying Jasmine plays the victim.
Right. And her mother's reaction. Just a single tear.
Oh, that's brutal.
And Jasmine wasn't there. That regret.
Yeah.
What does that tell you about the mother's reaction even before this hearing?
It shows the cruelty wasn't just in the hearing room. It was already out there. Karoline was willing to hurt someone indirectly, someone who couldn't fight back, knowing it would wound their child.
Yeah.
And Jasmine's regret just adds another layer of pain, making Karoline's comment in the hearing even more. Just ignorant, callous, this unhealed terrain, the source calls it. She just walked right onto it.
Exactly. And it makes it so clear. Jasmine's silence wasn't passive. It wasn't not responding. It was a huge response, just rooted in all this memory and grief.
Absolutely.
Now, let's rewind slightly. The source also sets the scene really well before the big moment.
Yeah, back to room 2141.
That clinical vibe.
Right. And then Jasmine comes in. Calm, deliberate, carrying this worn silver clip binder. What did you think of that detail compared to Karoline?
It feels really personal, that binder, doesn't it? Like it holds something important, something real to her.
Yeah.
Whereas Karoline has this polished speech finder, feels more performed, rehearsed, maybe.
Could be. And they don't interact beforehand, which just sort of amps up the underlying tension,
Definitely. It shows two very different ways of being in that space, maybe two different mindsets about what's about to happen. And then the chair's opening remarks, all formal, procedural.
Standard stuff.
It just highlights the contrast with the raw emotion that's coming. You've got Jasmine, composed, attentive. Karoline still practiced, like they're coiled springs. And then Karoline starts her opening remarks. And you see how she sort of lays the groundwork, subtly at first.
Talking about dependency, framing community organizing as ideological radicalization.
Contrasting emotional education with traditional moral instruction. It's loaded language.
Very loaded. But she doesn't name names, not yet. How effective is that, do you think, that kind of veiled attack?
It's tricky, isn't it? Because it puts the other person in a bind. You either let it slide, or you react and look defensive.
Exactly. It plants these little seeds without her having to own it directly. And Jasmine, just taking notes, seemingly unaffected, but the source mentions this electric stillness.
Yeah, suggesting something is landing. She's just choosing not to show it yet.
Right. But Karoline keeps going, talks about leadership, emphasizing the word real, talks about unprocessed trauma, victim narratives. Again, it feels aimed, even without a name attached. More and more aimed.
And then Jasmine quietly closes her folder. That little action feels like a shift, right?
Totally. It's like, okay, listening time is over. Something's changed in her posture. She's preparing for something else.
And Karoline maybe sees that lack of outward reaction as weakness, or maybe just pushes harder.
Could be, because she definitely escalates.
Yeah, she gets more direct. Behavior isn't a consequence, it's a choice. That's really laying blame now.
Right at Jasmine's feet. Implicitly. And you see Jasmine react physically gripping her pen, knuckles going white.
But still keeping it together on the outside.
That control, again, the source frames it as resistance, refusing to give Karoline the reaction she wants. And there's that historical weight too, right? How women, especially women of color, get judged for showing any emotion.
Absolutely. Called angry or unstable.
Exactly. So this control is also survival.
And then Karoline leans in a bit and asks that question. Maybe it comes from who raised them.
Oof. And the source says everyone in the room knew exactly who she meant. The target was clear.
Palpable. And that's when Jasmine lets go of the pen. The faint clink it makes on the table. In that quiet, it feels symbolic. Like, okay, that's it.
The line is crossed. The tension breaks. And then her response. So quiet, but just devastating. Do you know what the last thing my mother ever heard was?
And the room goes silent again. But it's a different silence now.
Yeah, anticipation, realization dawning.
And Jasmine tells the story. Room 306, St. Luke's, the green walls her mom hated, the TV playing.
Playing Karoline's earlier comments about women like Jasmine using pain for power.
And her mother's reaction, that single tear, acknowledging the cruelty silently.
And Jasmine wasn't there for that moment. She arrived the next morning.
And her mother was in a coma, never woke up.
The weight of that, knowing those were among the last things her mother heard. And she couldn't respond, couldn't defend herself.
It just lays bare the violation, doesn't it?
Mm.
Karoline used her platform to hurt someone vulnerable, then used that pain against her daughter in a hearing. And Jasmine's statement, Karoline used her mother as a case study. You don't know her, you never did. The source says the silence after that was just profound, thick with grief, injustice.
And Jasmine stays standing, refusing to sit down. That itself is a statement.
Huge.
And she explains her earlier silence. Says it wasn't weakness, it was a choice. A burden, really, for women like her who get judged no matter how they react.
She lists the labels, right?
Right.
Aggressive, unstable, cold, self-serving. Is that double standard laid bare?
Exactly. She talks about pausing, breathing, waiting, trying to manage it. But bringing her mother into it, that was the line.
That broke the dam. She says her silence was a dam that Karoline cracked open. What a metaphor.
It really is. And then those lines, they're unforgettable. The weight of her silence made sense. It was the strength of choosing when to speak and why.
I don't need to scream to reclaim her dignity. She earned that in how she lived.
And today I reclaim mine in how I choose to respond. Just, wow. A total declaration of self-worth, of dignity.
And the room feels it, the gravity. She won't sit. She looks right at Karoline. You didn't know her? And you don't deserve to say her name.
Chilling. And the source describes the room as being almost protective in its stillness. The chair gets, this isn't a hearing now, it's a reckoning.
Right.
And Karoline, still silent in the face of all that truth.
Yeah. Jasmine lets out a breath. Finality. She didn't get to defend herself. But I do. I just did.
And the silence just holds, the camera pulls back. It's all about Jasmine standing her ground, asserting her lineage, her legacy, and drawing a boundary.
And how this thing ripples outwards afterwards is just fascinating.
Yeah, that 3-minute clip goes viral, TikTok, with that comment, watch until 2.1 dull.
It wasn't just clickbait, though, was it?
No, it seemed different. The source talks about it spreading in, unexpected ways. Group chats, teacher staff rooms, even a 10th grade English class.
And the student's reaction that she was protecting something, that's sharp.
It is. It wasn't about outreach. It was about recognition. Seeing someone stand up for something sacred.
Yeah, nonprofit office, a principal stopping outside a classroom. The feeling wasn't anger. It was, I know that feeling.
That feeling of having to bite your tongue or seeing someone you care about just reduced to an object, a talking point.
Exactly. And then the letters start arriving. Hundreds of them. Handwritten.
Not just quick online comments. Real letters.
From all sorts of people. A veteran talking about unspoken silence. A teenager in Florida hoping she can respond like that one day. Single moms, nurses.
Even letters in other languages. It clearly touched something universal. What do you make of that outpouring, the sheer range of people?
It shows how deeply Jasmine's stand resonated. That feeling of being silenced or seeing someone you love silenced, it cuts across everything.
Yeah.
And her choice to keep the letters unsorted, saying grief isn't meant to be alphabetized. That feels so right for the rawness of it all.
It does. It honors the messiness of it. And her deciding not to make a big public statement herself, just letting the moment and those letters speak, that feels consistent with her strength in the hearing. Quiet power.
It really does. And Karoline, what happens to her?
Well, it's described as a kind of slow unraveling, canceled interviews, book pulled, campaigns stalled.
Not exactly canceled in the usual shouting way, though.
No. The source suggests it was more like being silenced by the contrast. Jasmine's raw truth just made Karoline's rhetoric feel empty, maybe? It led to a reassessment, which sounds like a retreat.
She basically disappears from the news cycle.
Yeah, speaks volumes, doesn't it?
And the lasting impact. Jasmine finds this old cassette tape, her mother's voice.
After her mother's death, yeah, and the message on it. Her mom understood the pressures Jasmine faced, knew society wanted women to be fragile, told her not to shrink.
And that strength is about choosing when to speak.
Right. And that story from Howard Law, Jasmine being called rude just for being clear and right.
And her mom's advice. Oh, it's incredible. When they can't call you wrong, they'll call you difficult.
Wow.
Swallowing tears isn't weakness, baby. It's survival. Real power is knowing when to bend and still not break.
That's wisdom right there, passed down.
It really is. And Jasmine writes a letter to her mom then, finally getting it all out.
Processing it.
Yeah, and leaving that hearing room, the sound of her heels echoing, knowing that room was changed.
Fundamentally shifted by her truth.
And you see the ripples a week later. A pastor in Texas quoting, "You don't deserve to say her name."
Mm-hmm.
A nonprofit board talking about handling pain gracefully. That silent congressman being moved. A new writing prompt in Atlanta. A professor asking about leadership.
It shows the real impact, doesn't it? It doesn't just vanish, it goes deep.
It lands inward, settles in.
Yeah.
So when you really boil it down, Jasmine's silence, it wasn't giving up at all.
Not even close. It was intentional, powerful, rooted in memory, in protecting her mother and reclaiming her own dignity.
It really drives home that idea. Strength isn't always loud.
No. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is just quietly, firmly hold your ground.
And it makes you wonder, doesn't it, as a listener? When was the last time maybe you chose quiet dignity over needing to win an argument?
Or have you really listened to the silences, the unspoken stories of people you've lost?
Yeah. And have you ever found strength in holding back? A quiet strength. Maybe learn from someone important to you.
It's powerful stuff to think about. And while, again, this story is dramatized,
right, it's fiction.
It definitely reflects some very real emotional truths. It invites you to think about the weight of words and the power that can sometimes live in silence.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for diving deep into this one with us.
Yeah, thanks for the conversation.
If this resonated with you listening, please share it. These are the kinds of moments worth talking about, unpacking that weight of silence together.